Good morning. Welcome to Empowered Living. Ann and Rachel here, two professional women with blended families running businesses. We walk with women to find restoration of life, to understand God's purpose for women in caring for their body, their mind through nutrition, fitness, and mental health to live the lives they have been given to the fullest that God wants for them. I'm Dr. Ann Lewis, psychologist. I'm an eating disorder specialist and addictions specialist. I am also a personal trainer and certified nutrition specialist. And this
And
is
I am Rachel Ferguson. Happy to join along with my dear friend Ann. I am a physical therapist and certified nutrition and life coach and a business owner.
and today we are going to actually talk about something that's really exciting, which is feeding the spirit, harnessing mindful eating in the battle for your mind. And this is one of my favorite topics. And Rachel, would you kind of just share a little bit about what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, absolutely. Today we're going to dive into some mindful eating practices. We want to make sure that you guys understand the biblical teachings and explore our thoughts around how we are influenced by Satan. We'll look at practical tips for eating mindfully and reflect on the relevant scripture to guide all of us on that journey.
All right, so this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I have been doing eating disorder work for over 2 decades, and I'm also in recovery from an eating disorder. And one of the things that gets talked about in our field very often is the ED or the eating disorder, and how it kind of is it's almost like it's its own entity. And there's lots of books written on this. There's a lot of CBT techniques done for people with eating disorders around this. But one of the things that I discovered in my journey, not just as a practitioner, but somebody in recovery, is that what's actually occurring to us is a spiritual attack, that this is Satan's attack on our thoughts, because Satan can only attack our thoughts. And so, when I was growing up, one of the ways that this began in my own life, and I have a grandmother who has long since passed, and she was near and dear to me, but she would say cute little things to me as I was a kid growing up. And one of the phrases that she liked to use was Annie Banani with a big fat fanny. Well, I was
Oh,
very young. I was, I think, 5 or 6 when she started this, and she would pat me on the behind, and she meant it as a term of endearment. But based upon who I was and what I was experiencing at the time, and some of what I noticed in my own mother and my own family related to weight struggles and talk about food and obsession with what other people look like, is that planted a seed for me as a really young girl about what was wrong with me.
yeah.
And so as I got older, and I wasn't much older by the time, I think I was 8 by the time my eating disorder had begun, I had already kind of firmly established what Satan had planted from something that my grandmother meant as just a term of endearment to, for me, felt like something that I needed to be ashamed of.
Mhm.
And that started my journey with food struggles. And as a practitioner now, what I see a lot of women that will walk into my office of all various shapes and sizes. And it's a very similar struggle. No matter what weight they're at, no matter what they're doing with food, it is never good enough. And that is in psychology what we like to call is the negative core belief. But that is actually put in us, that doesn't come from inside of us. That's actually put in us by Satan. And the
Mhm.
trap that we get into is that when Satan plants those seeds, and for some of us, those seeds begin really, really young, that when we don't know what to do with it because we're too young, because we're immature, because no one is able to speak to us about what we're experiencing, or we're not able to speak about what it is that we believe inside of our head, what happens is that thought kind of takes root and it takes a stronghold, especially when I begin to act on that thought.
Mhm.
Um, and so when we look at this through the lens of psychology, and this is where I love bringing this in because even the Bible talks about this. Corinthians 10:5 states that we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself against the knowledge of God, right? So the knowledge of God and what God put in us was that we were complete and we were made perfect by his sacrifice.
Right.
And what happens then is that Satan, because he's so jealous, wants to move against that. He wants to move against God's grace. He wants to move against what it is that God's doing in us. And he wants to kind of convince us that there's something wrong with us. And when we reinforce that, and in psychology, the phrase is called sublimation. So when I'm experiencing something negative inside of me, a negative feeling like shame or sadness or loneliness,
Mhm.
and I don't know how to cope with it. And many of us don't. I would say a grand majority of us on this planet, we're not given emotional skill sets as children. It's not taught in schools. Our
Right.
parents generally don't know, our grandparents didn't know. That what happens then is that my brain, to try to stay defended of that, it's called a psychological defense mechanism, is it defends me by then creating something else for me to focus on that feels more manageable. So I might feel really ashamed of myself, or very self-conscious and very lonely, or feel like I quote unquote don't belong. And then what happens is that, because I don't know how to cope with that, my brain turns it into, well, you might belong if you were smaller like these people.
Mhm.
And for me growing up, I was one of the bigger kids in my class. I was taller. I wasn't necessarily big, but I was taller. And so I was bigger boned. I was an athlete. And I looked at some of my friends who were really tiny, who were very popular. And I thought, well, the reason why I'm not popular and liked by them is because I'm too big.
Mhm.
And again, that kind of fit in line with what I was hearing at home, that fits in
Right.
line with the culture.
Yep.
And so I began restricting food. And then it later turned into other stuff because I didn't know how to combat those thoughts. And, we moved then full blown into my teenage life, where I have spent over a decade paying attention to those thoughts and paying attention
Yeah.
to just this strive to be thinner. And it
Right.
didn't matter what the number was. And this is what I see
Right.
clinically tells. It does not matter what the number is. It doesn't
Right.
matter the size of clothing, the
Right.
scale, and what it says. You will never be good enough, because you will never be able to scratch the itch that our worthiness is under attack.
Right. Right.
And Rachel, I know that you and I share similar stories with this, and I
Yep.
wanted to ask you about kind of the roots that occurred for you, and where you saw that manifest for you as when you were young and your eating disorder began.
Yeah, so I also experienced eating disorder. Um I would say again it was, I don't remember from a small child. Um it was moving into those teen years and probably very much the same. I was average height, average size athlete too. But it was starting to compare probably just who are the people that are popular and who's not. But then my world started crashing down. My parents went through a divorce, and I started to gravitate towards restricted eating. So I was anorexic in my teenage years. But it felt like it was the only thing that I could control in my world. Like it seemed like that was the first thing that I could grab onto, and I could limit how much I was eating. And not really that I didn't feel within me that I was too big, but yet it seemed like, okay, well, that's what I can take a hold of and I've got to start to fix because everything else I can't even grab a hold of. And so the first thing I went to was food restriction, all the way down to, unfortunately, I was eating very little, down to just a spoonful of food a day. And that was
Wow.
managing. I went almost 2 months with just eating a spoonful of food a day.
Oh my goodness. What?
Yeah.
And can I ask you a little bit,
Yeah.
not to get overly personal, but for you, what was the worst part of your parents' divorce for you as a teenager?
Um, Goodness. It was probably the dividing the where I stayed. So a lot of decisions had to be made at a young age. My parents divorced when I was 10, but very quickly into junior high, I was the one that made the decisions as to where I wanted to stay, for the school I wanted to get to which parent I wanted to live with, to activities that I wanted to be involved in. I had to make all of those decisions, which again, it should be a blessing that you're part of making that decision, like, you get to choose, but there
Mhm.
was a lot of big decisions that had to be made of, I was doing really well in school, I was a top like I was an A student and very focused on school and what I wanted to do in life. I'd been that way well before my parents' divorce. But so what happened is I stayed with a parent that so I could go to the school that would then get me in the direction of where I wanted to go after high school.
Mhm.
But in turn was not necessarily the parent that I always enjoyed being around. Like we had much more challenges at home because of that. And so I felt like I had a whole lot of decisions that I had to make. And so it was almost like, again, you had made mention, like it was numbing to just go, okay, well, then I'm going to restrict. It seems so silly. Like I sit here in my brain now and think, why in the world would I restrict food in the middle of all the other things that I'm having to make decisions for? But that's what I took hold of. That seemed like I could control that.
And I want to ask you, what do you think, looking back now, and of course hindsight is always 2020, but looking
Yeah.
back now, what do you think that that younger version, junior high is such a rough time frame too, like for
Oh,
all of us. It's
no.
like, even if there's nothing changing, junior high is rough. Um,
Yes.
what do you think now looking back that you needed most from both of your parents in
Mm,
making some of those difficult decisions?
mm. Probably just their again, it's so hard because I have teenagers now, and there's
Uh-huh.
just some decisions that they shouldn't have to make. They want to, but they really don't need like I just needed parents to still be parents through that season and
Yeah.
make some of those decisions. And then I probably wouldn't have taken on the load of deciding everything down to food on how I'm going to manage that. Um, but I know teenagers that are going to want to but I want to have that ability and control. Like I get to pick where I want to be. But even unfortunately walking through a divorce myself with kids, like teenagers then pick one parent and then pick the other parent to stay with and they're trying to navigate to figure out again all the way down to why does this parent react like it's the cause and effect of what do I get to do at this parent's house that I don't get to do at that parent's house. um
It's overwhelming.
it's a lot plus trying to figure out how to fit with your friends. And again,
Yeah.
I always laugh. I kind of talked about the standing in the mirror. Like most of the clients I work with, we land on society of I number that I want to change. But in reality, like people made fun of me because I have sticks for legs and I can't build muscle tone without significant exercise work, which I am capable of doing, but my body doesn't hold muscle tone the same somebody else's body does. It is not genetically in my muscle fiber to just
Mhm.
be like, oh, I can do 5 reps and I can have great lean muscle. I, and I'm not a heavy person, but that's what I thought. Like, I thought I want to look the healthy athlete, lean muscle tone. Again, what I put in myself as a unrealistic expectation when there was nothing wrong with my size. Like I can't change the sticks I have for arms unless I exercise, not change the number on the scale.
Yes. So, and I want to kind of talk about what you're talking about. There's something wrong with me. I need to look like someone else. Like
Yes.
I want to speak about this. We talked about this last time, but I talked about it with
Yeah.
someone at some point in
Yeah.
time.
It was last time. Yeah.
But God made us so uniquely that all of our
Yeah.
fingerprints and DNA are different. And
Yeah.
I want to notice that when we feel like we don't belong when we're young, and this is a very, very common experience for nearly every single young person.
Yes.
I feel like I don't belong, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to belong by looking like or being more like the group of people that I most admire.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to notice how our shift moves off Jesus and what Jesus says who we are in him.
Mhm.
And like and it moves off of even being like him as most admired. It moves into being, if I'm more like them, then I'm not going to feel so weird. I'm not going to feel so alone. I'm going to feel like I belong to someone.
Right.
And so I'm going to try to be someone else.
Mhm.
so that I feel like I can finally fit in.
Yeah, so you asked what piece my parents, and again, I love my parents, and all of that walk made me who I am today.
Yep.
But one of the things that I grew up in the church. My parents served in the church. I raised my kids in the church and serve in the church. But one of the things I realized is I didn't say enough that God made you to not fit in. Like, we spend so much time trying to fit in, and my parents didn't share their walk and say those words like, "No, you were made to be you. You were made to be exactly this way."
Hmm.
And again, all the way down to like, what are you looking at that you don't think fits? Like those conversations of, I love you, you are valued, God values you, and I felt loved by my family. But all the way down to truly saying biblical principles to my kids that God didn't wire us to look all alike. Like he truly wired us to stand out. He made us
Yes.
uniquely, and we can't. Those were the pieces. I saw us going to church, but I didn't hear like, okay, well, you have to go back and let's get into the word together. And again, I don't fault anybody. I didn't do it. This is me walking into
Yes.
this stage of almost 50 going, "Hey, I've got to help my kids understand that it goes down to that real relationship." Like really understanding again the spiritual battle and the relationship we need to see that we are uniquely made.
Yes. And I want to throw in there, it's what happens, because when we experience overwhelmed, and overwhelmed, can we just acknowledge, as human beings, that is a common experience for us. And
Right.
God didn't say that, like, us going into the world was going to be easy. He actually said it's
Right.
going to be hard, right? Like,
Right.
and by that, as a psychologist, what I like to encourage people to think about is hard means we're going to have a lot of feelings about it.
Yeah.
Things aren't going to be easy. We're going to get overwhelmed. We're going to get anxious. We're going to struggle, because that kind of refocuses back on God. But if we don't know how to do that, or
Right.
we don't have parents that know how to help us sit through those feelings, what
Yep.
happens is then, especially overwhelmed is a combination of anxious and alone. And there's only two ways that we manage anxiety. One is we overfunction, two is we underfunction. And as
Mhm.
Christians, we're actually called to give that anxiety to God and still do
Mhm.
the right steps. And
Yep.
if we break that down to what it sounds like you did and what I did as a teenager, I'm going to overfunction now. I'm going to do everything in my power to essentially put everything on me, which is
Yeah.
more overwhelm, because
Yep.
everything feels like it's on me,
Mhm.
when really it sounds like what you were needing more of is your parents saying, "Hey, we got this. It's
Yes.
okay. Is this too hard for you? We're going to make some of these, we're going to help you with some of these decisions, because I don't want you to feel like it's all on your shoulders.
Right.
You're not alone.
Right. Right.
These are big decisions, and we're going to help you navigate them because we understand things a little bit differently than you."
Right. And you may not like it. And this doesn't sound good and you do want to do it, but you have somebody walking with you through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we've got this really interesting mix of legitimate emotional states that we're feeling. And think about emotions as chemical reactions in the body,
Mhm.
cortisol and adrenaline. When we get stressed, we
Yeah.
know that we could take blood serum tests and
Yes.
identify that those are
Yes.
facts. But
Mhm.
then the stories, aka the thoughts, that's where Satan comes in. So we can experience overwhelm, we can experience moments of loneliness or disconnection from other people, right? But the issue is that we create stories in our brain, and those stories, if they're navigated by Satan and not based upon the truths that we know God gave us, what's biblically written, and our ability to lean into that relationship with God, then what happens is that we cultivate this connection with these negative core beliefs and what it is that Satan wants to derail us. Right. And
Right.
I don't know about you, but like, I was a kid who started Christianity really, really young, but my relationship with Jesus and my relationship with God didn't mature until my late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
So my ability to rely on God or go to God in times of hardship was more like I was using it almost like a slot machine. It's like I'm saying a prayer.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, but like, for me as a kid, my understanding was God was like, if since he was so wonderful and could control everything, if I said a prayer and I was worthy of a human being, then that prayer would be answered.
Right.
Right. So if I was
Right.
in pain and God wasn't rescuing me from pain, it was
Right.
because either I wasn't worthy or God wasn't amazing.
Right.
And
Right.
that led me to stop praying
Yep.
because then I was just mad at God
Right.
or I was mad at myself.
Right.
And then fast forward to lots of eating disorders, because I wound up developing, I went from anorexia to bulimia and then binge eating disorder and back to bulimia. Like I had everything. What happened then is then I felt really ashamed of how I was engaged.
Right.
I felt
Right.
ashamed of my, not just my body, but I felt ashamed of my behaviors, and I didn't want to be seen,
Right.
not just by the people around me, my own parents, my family, my friends, but I didn't want to be seen by God either.
Right.
And so I moved further and further away from my relationship with Christ and what it was that he actually spoke into my life and what
Right.
he cultivated and created me for.
Right. And it takes that process of finding someone to help walk with you and then understanding that this whole life after accepting Jesus as your savior is a journey of getting to know him better. Like Adam and Eve went and hid and separated because they were in shame from just eating the apple. And again, the whole Bible lays out so many people that again had moments where they felt like they had to hide to get away from their behavior, but the Lord was like, no, reach out and take my hand. And we have to understand that it is steps. There's steps that we can do to get up. He said, my mercies are new every day. So we literally have to understand. He's like, it's okay. Just like when we discipline our children, like the consequence, okay, it's happened. We may have to walk out a consequence again if we've binge eat or
Hmm.
restrict eat and anorexia. Like, okay, it happens, and we've got to get steps to, all right, we are going to do this again, and how can we keep making the steps to move forward? And so, I want to make sure that we hit on all of these practical ways that, again, the Lord loves us. He created us. We are uniquely and wonderfully made, and now we have to keep walking out the journey. Like it's okay. Like here,
Yes.
you and I both sit. Like we have walked this out and we have done things that are not great for our body. He gave us this body to do something so that we can share with people and walk with people and love on our families. And so it's walking it out. It is a journey.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So let's talk about some practical applications. I think we covered kind of the thought basis. This is a spiritual attack. And I
Yep.
want to throw that out there. Be it the spiritual attack is that your body never looks like what it is that you want it to look like. It never feels good enough. The number doesn't feel good enough. And or you're struggling with food, either restricting food or overeating food. It's become a source of comfort or a source of punishment for you, or a sense of worthiness. And what I mean by worthiness is sometimes we can get into this mindset that somehow I'm an amazing human being if I can restrict what my body needs.
Hmm.
And this is a form of punishment, it's a form of self-harm, ironically.
Yep.
But that it says something amazing about me that other people can't do.
Hmm.
Therefore, I'm good enough. So, all right, first step, and because this is a spiritual attack in our thoughts. First step is that we have to actually take captive every thought. The Second Corinthians 10:5, the Lord actually requires that we take captive every thought. And I don't know about you, but we have, I don't remember the exact estimate, but something like 70,000 unprompted thoughts a day. I know I
Wow.
do. Right. There are moments that I will have thoughts about people that I love in my own life that aren't what I want to air, right? Like, and it's where I feel like I'm actually horrified that I'm having this thought. Okay,
Yeah.
but the problem that we get into is when we judge ourselves for having those experiences versus just noticing it and then moving towards what it is that God wants for us, right? Because as human beings, we tend to be really self-centered, and the moment we can start moving into others, the moment that we can just acknowledge that we're limited, that we struggle with things, one of the ways that we take captive our thoughts is that we have to make sure that we're refuting them. So if we have a thought about, I'm not good enough, or I would feel so much better as long as I got to eat that chocolate cake.
Hmm.
Okay. Or I'd feel so much better if I could get into a size fill in the blank or get to
Yeah.
this number on the scale,
Right.
right? We actually are commanded to take captive those thoughts because the moment that we allow ourselves to pursue that thought, I'm not, this is very, very different than me talking with you about having healthy goals for your body. Yes, you can change your body. Yes, you can manage your weight.
Yep.
Yes, you can enjoy food that you enjoy.
Yep.
That is not what I'm talking about. But when it's this obsessiveness and this compulsion, like these compulsive behaviors that go along with that obsessiveness, we do have to take captive those thoughts. And that means that I have to be able to spot the enemy's lie. So
Yep.
when all I can focus on is getting home, and my personal favorite food is tortilla chips, right? So I come home, I have tortilla chips in my house all the time. But if I'm thinking about, all I can think about is coming home and getting my chips, right? Or getting my chips and then sitting down, and like I have to actually be really, really not only mindful about this, but I have to acknowledge why it is that I am so focused on this right now. And the way that I do that, and the way that I encourage patients to do this, is what is the high and what is the low of the day. That seems almost stupidly simple.
Mhm.
But with that, in identifying our lows, what did I feel about that? What is the worst part of that? Because what we were created to do, we were literally, our maker was so amazing. We were created to experience emotions and then sit in them and work through them, right? So when I'm
Yeah.
feeling really stressed and I have that cortisol and I say, man, the worst part of my day is that I couldn't help someone who was really struggling, that I couldn't seem to speak to them in a way that they could hear me, or that someone left my office and they were still really discouraged, or I couldn't fix the situation for somebody. And that really hurt my heart for them. I feel sad for them. If I can get in connection with that sadness and allow myself to just experience the sadness, then the thoughts of those tortilla chips, even though I still love them, guys, but that becomes less loud,
Yeah.
right? Or the thoughts that somehow I wasn't good enough as a provider because I couldn't make somebody see the light, or I couldn't make someone choose differently, or I couldn't fix someone's state and in their environment, that it wasn't actually about me. That is up to the Holy Spirit. That is not my job.
Right.
My job is to show
Right.
up to speak truth to people, right? And if I
Right.
can stay focused on spotting what the lie is, right?
Right.
And this sounds so simple, it does, and it's so complicated, but if I can't identify even the emotion that I'm experiencing and give myself the appropriate reaction to that emotion, I'm going to struggle with the thoughts.
Yeah.
Any thoughts for you about this? Because I know that we work kind of in different fields, but I know that as a life coach, I'm sure that you see some of these things. How do you see this kind of pop up in the people that you work with?
Well, I think we've hit on a lot of it. Um, Again, just taking the moment. The biggest thing is taking the moment. If they are open and want to readjust how they're looking at food, um, again, there's so many layers to this. I, again, I want to make sure that I hit on. Um, you got to recognize what is good about yourself. So really, we have to have a gratitude recognition so that
Hmm.
then we can start to say, okay, when, because everything from the Lord is perfect and good. The fruit of the Spirit is all good things. And every time something is negative, we have to start to recognize just those two different pieces, the good thoughts and bad thoughts. Um, and they, oh, there's so many layers to this. I feel like my head's all in different tangents.
Well, well, and I wonder if you can speak a little bit about how, in terms of coaching, because emotions play a role in this, right? And
Yep.
people's perception of themselves and their abilities, and even shame plays a role in how you coach people. um, when you see someone that comes to you and they're saying, but I can't do this, or this is going to be too hard for me, or has all the excuses, valid excuses in the book,
Right.
how do you help them kind of navigate those lies?
Yes. So again, it's putting practical pieces in. I encourage them. We start with just what is great things that they see about themselves, whatever little piece they have to come to one grateful thing that they have about themselves. And that can just be they're grateful for the job that they do or someone they've helped. And that's great because if I can take that moment where they are grateful for who they are, they see value in who they are to the world around them. And then we
Uh-huh.
start to look at, again, food is how we have to do our life. We have to have fuel to be able to do the activities to care for all the people every day. Um, and so it's consistently putting the steps in, getting that gratitude for who they are, gratitude through a verse, whatever verse they prefer to hang on to. And then it's just consistently going to that each day. So they have to have just the processes in place. Um, all the way down to, so we start with praying, having gratitude for ourselves, going to the verse that's most important and speaks to them. And then you're going to
Hmm.
start to look at, okay, as you're eating, again, we lay out all of the pieces of, okay, what's in front of me? Is this actually enough fuel? Um, and for every person, it's whether it is it too much fuel? Is it like too much food in front of me to take in? And but we're slowing down because in Psalm 34:8, it tells us, taste and see what the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in him. And so we have to stop and look at when we're eating, what have I put in front of me? Am
Hmm.
I aware of what it is that I have that I'm putting in my mouth?
So,
Like, am I doing too many things as I eat?
yep.
Go ahead.
So and I want to just note what you're talking about is this, the second part of this is and you did a beautiful segue to this, is mindful eating practices, right? So taking captive every thought, I've got to acknowledge what it is that God says about me. I've got to not acknowledge
Yep.
the truth. I've got to
Yep.
acknowledge the truth. And this is how we combat the lies, right? Whether or
Yep.
not logically this is enough fuel. And then we're going to move into that second part, which is those mindful eating practices, right? The gratitude of who I am, the gratitude of even being in the place that I am, because then that goes from God's truths over us
Yes.
to now slowing down. Is this because it's just food? It's not a value judgment. If you have cake, it doesn't make you a bad person. If you don't have
Right.
cake, it doesn't make you a bad person.
Right.
It just is fuel. That's it.
Right.
Right? Is this enough for me? Is it too much for me? So those mindful skill sets.
Right.
um and some of the ways that I encourage people with, I don't know about for you, but for mindful skill sets, is I encourage them to track their food. And I'm not talking about
Yep.
obsessing, I'm not talking about
Right.
obsessively calorie counting, just
Just
simply saying,
awareness. Yep.
am I budgeting?
Yep.
And this is a trigger word sometimes for patients that I use, that I hear often in my practice. They're like, "Oh, now you're talking about a diet." That's not what I'm talking about.
Mm-mm.
I'm talking about a paycheck, right? So at
Right.
the end of the week, if you make $1,000 and
Right.
you've got rent that's $800, right?
Right.
I've only got $200 left. That's it,
Right.
right? So I can't go out and spend $400 on groceries because I
Right.
know that I don't have enough.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to food. It's not about obsessing over it. It's about simply saying, here's my range. And it's,
Right.
again, it's not like you're not going to die if you go over by, unlike your bank account, you're not going to
Right.
like explode if you go over even by 200 calories.
Right.
But it's just about simply being aware that I've done that.
Right. Right. And again, that practice we put in place, money seems much more tangible, that yes, we have to do it or we have to work more, but it the same comes in with our calories. Like our fuel, the food that we're putting in us. And again, I am happy to work with people that I want to say, let's learn to eat what you love and love what you eat. Like if we have to start eating, and I have literally had clients that still eat Taco Bell and go to the gas station and have the cake because that's what they have to hold on to first as they get awareness around it. And that's okay. Let's just look, do you need 3 bites of cake or do you need the whole cake? And start to look at, well, 3 bites might actually feel satisfying, give me that taste that I'm looking for in my mouth. And I really
Yep.
don't need the whole cake. And so it is just an awareness of, I have food and I have food and I don't care where you start at. Let's just look at it. Let's look
Yes.
at it and start to carve out, okay, I didn't need the big value box, the $5 value box, which is great because it's value. And then here we go back to that money, like we are aware of how much money we want to spend or not spend, but let's look at, okay, so with that big value box, I only needed the burrito and I actually feel okay. Fine,
Hmm.
save the rest of the value box and fit that money budget that you're working on and save the rest for later. There's nothing to say that we had to have it all right then. Why can't we take it home? And so it's just tracking gives us an awareness to go, huh, I never thought of looking at it the same way I look at my budget. And again, then you can adjust the other things. If it's over and I have time to exercise, then I'm going to exercise. If I don't have time to exercise, then okay, maybe I need to readjust all of the fuel that's in front of me. It's the same concept. We're
Hmm.
tracking to get information so that we can make mindful readjustments that fit best for us.
Yes. So, and mindful eating habits is about being present and aware of our eating habits in general, recognizing the impact of food on our bodies and our spirits.
Yes.
And so, sometimes when I'm working with people, oftentimes it's after they've eaten something or after they
Hmm.
haven't eaten something that we're backtracking to identify what was the emotion that was happening, what was the high and low of the day, what was the fuel source, why is it that you turned to this, um, and and I want to kind of note that we do pick certain foods based upon emotionally what we're going through. So crunchy
Yeah.
foods is usually a lot of frustration
Yeah.
and anger and maybe helplessness.
Yeah.
Um, Sweet foods and generally really smooth foods are comfort laden things if we're turning
Fine.
towards ice cream or sweetened yogurts or that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then when we do combination foods, it's because we have a mix of emotional states.
Yeah.
And it's about meeting some of those emotional needs or some of the needs. For me, for example, when I'm coming home to eat tortilla chips, it's because I'm making dinner. I'm hungry. I haven't had an adjustment period from work that I probably need more.
Yeah.
And I might be frustrated about something that happened during my day that I felt overwhelmed or helpless in. And if I can't stop, I can't pause, I'm just going to reach for the tortilla chips while I make dinner, right?
Right.
And sometimes we do, right? Sometimes we
Right.
have to. But
Right.
the problem with this is that the more often that we do that as human beings, what happens is that we create neurological maps that then run automatically on autopilot. And so
Right.
instead of it being about mindfulness, now it's just simply I'm doing the thing that I do every day when I come home from work, and this is my routine now. And
Right.
it all starts with that the way that Satan kind of implants things in our head, be it with
Yes.
food or be it with our body image. There's something wrong with us, or you need this, and then you're going to feel so much better once you get it. I
Right.
don't feel better after I had even a handful of tortilla chips. Like my day didn't get better. My frustration didn't go away. I'm still
Yeah.
frustrated. I might be less hungry, but
Mhm.
I'm still feeling frustrated from my day.
Yes.
And so breaking down some of what we're talking about, refuting the lie, like the lie is that I need the tortilla chips.
Yeah.
Like the lie is I can't cope without them. Of course I
Yes.
can. I'll be
Yes.
fine.
Yes.
Right. But then if I'm judging myself for them, if I feel ashamed of how I'm engaging, then I'm never going to problem solve that. And I'm never going to be able to go, what is it that I need when I get home from work? Well, I need some fuel really quickly so I can make dinner appropriately.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe I want to pick different fuel. Maybe I still want tortilla chips. I don't know.
Right.
And maybe I need some downtime. I need to go put on
Yeah.
my sweats. I need to go take a bath. I need to go walk outside, get some fresh
Right.
air, walk my dogs, and not in this race to come home, but rather. So one of the things that I started doing, right, as a part of my own mindfulness practice, is I started meal prepping on Sundays for the whole week, so that I'm just putting something in the oven, and then I go for a walk,
Yeah.
which takes me out of
And
the kitchen.
sometimes you may have to have the tortilla chips
Yep,
still, and it fits
I'm
your
hungry.
available amount of food or fuel for the day, but then recognizing, "Oh, I still need to decompress from the day." Like, you could
Yes.
still have the chips and be within your fuel for the day or the week, and you still may start to recognize, like, I don't know that I always need to. It's recognizing if it suddenly is a moment where, like, why am I putting a chip in my mouth and I'm not even hungry today? It's starting to recognize those moments that it has just become habit.
Right. And I want to kind of notice something else, because this goes back and forth with the lies that Satan gives us in the spiritual attack. I used to just come home and eat the chips and then feel awful because I couldn't quote unquote control myself.
Yeah.
There was something wrong with me. That
Yeah.
is Satan's attack on us.
Right.
Right? Because he wants us to feel shame about it, so we don't talk about it, we don't address it, we don't problem solve it. We feel like less as human beings. And then I'm really focused. And here I do eating disorder work. What's wrong with me? I can't control whether or not I have a handful of chips when I come home. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm
Right.
hungry. I'm frustrated. I'm
Right.
overwhelmed. I'm not coping the way I need to cope. That's it.
Right. Right.
I'm not broken.
Right.
But my behavior pattern may need to be addressed so that I don't feel bad about it.
Correct. Correct.
And again, as you said that, like, absolutely, am I still gonna have the tortilla chips? Probably am.
Yeah. Yes. And
Because I
that's
really like
okay.
them. But I'm gonna have a portion size, and
Right.
we can manage that. And one of the techniques I encourage people to do, if having a big bag of chips or a
Yeah.
big huge thing of ice cream is overwhelming for you, get single serving sizes. Yes, it
Yes. Yes.
costs
Yes. Yes.
more. Yes,
Yes.
it costs more, but it's gonna matter so much more to you if you can eat one and be done.
Right. Right.
And you grab it, go somewhere, go on your walk, go sit down somewhere, whatever it is that that looks like for you. Drink water, but we're going to slow down that process. So,
Right.
so that mindfulness and the way that we're engaged. And sometimes what I encourage people to do, especially if it's a spiritual attack, right? Being able to spot that lie, like there's nothing wrong with me that I love tortilla chips. There's nothing wrong with me that
No,
I'm struggling with
absolutely.
that. And I have to be able to spot the enemy's lies. Now,
Yes.
the underside of this, as I kind of hinted at, is that the more that we engage in that behavior, the more neurological mapping that we create for that automation. And
Yeah.
so that's where we feel compelled to do the thing.
Yeah.
And that is challenging to break. But in that, what we have to do, and what I tell people oftentimes is, instead of looking at simply not doing a behavior, which is what I like to call a negative behavior management, positive behavior management is instead putting in place a different action. So the thing that I
Yeah.
mentioned about taking a walk, that's something I physically can do.
Right.
Right. So instead of it being about the tortilla chips and not eating it, or what I do or what the portion size, now I simply can say, when I go home, when I come home, the target is I'm going to take a walk first.
Right.
And in doing that, we manage not just the thoughts, right? This attack on us spiritually, but then also the behavioral component. And all of that requires that we have to address shame. We have to be able to address Satan's stronghold on us, that there's something somehow wrong with us, that we're not managing it differently.
Right. And again, it's that feeling, and we all have a feeling, and spending time with coaching as you start to get to know each other, it's helping recognize if you have that feeling of I'm not good enough, or oh, I should feel bad for eating that, like beginning to recognize the moments that you're telling yourself that I'm not good enough is the moment, like, I this is not how the Lord wants me to feel. This is where the devil's really poking at me. And okay, if you can implement that positive behavior activity, great. But then coming alongside with your therapist or your coach, it's together working to say, I there's more value to me. I need to not let the Satan tell me that I can't do that. We have to recognize why you feel you can't do that. Because again, just like that, chips are not bad. Ice cream is not bad. Cake is not bad. What is it about it that makes us feel like it's bad? And that's what we've got to get around.
Hmm. So I want to sum it up, because I think we kind of popcorn off of each other. But I want to kind of sum up how we engage in this in mindfulness eating practice. First step is that we have to identify the thoughts that Satan's giving us, either around I have to have this, or I can't have this, or it says something about me if I do have it or don't have it.
Yes.
Those are just spiritual attacks. Even if it says something amazing about me if I cannot eat it, despite the fact that I'm hungry, I'm somehow more worthy. That is a spiritual attack.
Right.
And we have to be able to spot the enemy's lies, and we're going to do that if we know our Bible, if we pursue what it is that God says who we are, what it is that we
Yes.
know about ourselves to be true, and who God created us is that we were perfectly and wonderfully made.
Yeah.
Second step, we have to slow down. We have to slow down this process, and sometimes it
Yeah.
happens after the fact. We get really curious.
Yep.
What happened today that was really hard, that I came home and ate like a trash panda? That's the phrase I like to use.
Mhm.
Or I didn't eat enough, and
Yep.
I left and I ended my day too hungry. Um, we have to look at things more fuel based. This is simply fuel. How is it that I did? I'm going to try, I'm beginning, either begin tracking. There are some great apps that do tracking. Again,
Yep.
be really cautious with the value that we put on it. Tracking is just
Yep.
information. Up
Yes.
or
Most
down
definitely.
doesn't make you a worse or better person.
Right.
It's just data. That's it.
Right. Yep.
How much protein did I get in? How many clean foods did I get in? How much processed food am I eating? These are really great things to look at. How am I
Yep.
hitting my targets for the day? Okay.
Yep.
Um, and, am I budgeting appropriately? Do I keep being over?
Yep.
Do I keep being under? Why?
Right.
Okay. Is
Are
it
there
because
certain days that
yes.
it's over or under, and why?
Yes. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to learn how to listen to our body. And when we're
Yep.
listening to our body, our weight's going to maintain. And that's a lovely place. If you're out there and you want to lose weight, the first step I tell every single person that I see is get to understand what it is that your body highest threshold can take for food,
Yep.
because that is your maintenance calories and that is not a trash metabolism calories.
Yep.
So if you've been eating 1200 calories
Yep.
and gaining weight or not losing it and you're like, but I can't do it. I can't eat. Like, yes, you can. You have gotten stuck in a trap that Satan wants you to be in, of being hungry and
Yes.
frustrated and overwhelmed, and it's not suiting you. So
Right.
figure out, and I encourage people to go to the TDE calculator, figure out what your resting metabolic rate should be, and eat up to that, and
Yeah.
see how your body maintains after several weeks of eating enough fuel. And
Right.
once you get there and you feel more, what I hear people say all the time, they feel more energy, their thoughts become clearer,
Yes.
it's easier to manage food, right?
Right.
Then we can begin then tapering down calorie wise if you're wanting to lose weight. So slow down, fuel based tracking, looking at your highs and lows of the day, what emotions occurred. And then the third step is we have to sit in the feelings. We have to do that. We have to be able to go, my low of the day of the week was this. This was
Hmm.
the worst part of this. I didn't
Yep.
really like this. And then journal about it if it's hard for you to sit in those feelings. Take a walk and simply identify how lousy that felt.
Yep.
Allow those feelings to come up. I promise you, they will pass if you sit in them.
Right. And again, most importantly, as you step into this and it just seems hard, reach out, make connections so someone can walk with you through this. Again, that staying and being at the recommended amount of nutrients in a day for you, like that's going to take 2 or 3 weeks to just get in the habit of seeing it and trying to maintain that nutrition amount. But then again, it takes 3 months to get used to what that looks like. And again, just as soon as you know the information, it's not turn around and change the process again. Like
Yes.
it's be in that. Let your body actually acclimate to getting the nutrients it needs, and you
Yes.
actually sleep better and feel better, and so many things come just being in those nutrients that you need, that be willing to keep walking that process out. Like we mentioned it last time, but it really does take 3 weeks to make a habit and 3 months to get that lifestyle going. It is
Yes.
hard and you want to swing and quickly go, but I want to take control of this. And it is a process. So really coming and having someone come alongside you to walk in that is highly beneficial, that you will actually be able to walk it out and keep the maintenance and readjustments to being in those feelings, and what is the right positive behaviors that I need to implement as I'm in these nutrients because my body actually feels good for the first time. All of that has to come together. Give yourself that window to make these adjustments.
And your body is going to be less stressed because of it. And again, that stress hormone is cortisol, which inhibits weight loss. So,
Right.
um, and I just want to share anecdotally as not just someone who helps with managing weight and issues with people, that I have had people come in my office that have been 150 pounds overweight, 100 pounds overweight, 50 pounds overweight, 20 pounds of overweight. And I've had people that have been 100 and 150 pounds overweight who have fought me on this process. I
Mhm.
can't eat that much. I'm
Yeah.
just going to get fatter.
Yep.
And they have stayed in that rut. They have stayed
Yep.
at that weight and they have dropped dropped and then regained and then gained more
Yep.
because they're trying to micromanage it. And I've had people that just are saying, like, this is so hard, but we don't want to trust our bodies. But God gave us our bodies. He gave us ways that we were wired to thrive, right? And
Yes.
other people that I like, day one, I say, go do this. I need you to do it and just maintain those calories. And they're like, okay, and they don't like it, right? So
Right.
we generally, I'll
Right.
take them out 6, sometimes 8 weeks of maintaining calories. And they're like, but I didn't come here
Yep.
to maintain calories. I'm like,
Yes.
I hear you, but
Yes.
your body has to reset.
Yes.
If you have been yo-yo dieting for 10, 20,
Ever.
30,
Yes.
most of your life, since, for me, since I was 8,
Yeah.
if you've been yo-yo dieting, it's going to take longer than a couple weeks to get your body to, like, to kind of breathe again, right? To
Yes.
realize it's getting good, solid nutrition on a regular basis.
Right.
And I've had women that then drop weight.
Right.
We do this and they don't like it, and but they do it. And
Right.
then I had a woman that just came into me recently. She's down 75 pounds. And she's like,
Yep.
I didn't even think it was going to be this simple. And I'm like, yes. She goes,
Right.
all these times I tried all these diets and did all this stuff, and all I
Yep.
had to do was this. And I was like, I know. And
Right.
it's because it doesn't sell, right? You can't, diets out there are going to try to sell you and convince you that all you need is this, or the only reason why is because you're eating too many carbs or not enough protein or not enough
Yep.
whatever. Like,
Yep.
and yes, we do need good nutritional balance, but all of that just fuels obsessiveness and compulsivity, and that's where Satan wants
Right.
us to be. That
Exactly.
is not how God designed us.
Right. Right. And again, both of us are speaking like this has been a process we've been walking out. Again, both of us are almost 50. So, what we're doing, like, we have enlisted trying to do the sanctification, the walking with the Lord, to understand and find gratitude in the body that we were given, realize that we can't compare ourselves to others, walk it out to be nutrition coaches because we understand better what fuel is in our body and that we need it. And we've also enlisted the help of someone walking beside us. So, like this,
Yes.
we're not saying one of these pieces is the best option. You've got to start to walk it out and hopefully learn faster than Dr. Ann and I have learned. We're trying to share this so that you can find these pieces a little bit more together quicker so that you can find value and joy that the Lord gave you a wonderful body to be able to love on those around you. And you've got to see the beauty in the life that you've been given.
Oh, I love it. I could not have said it better. That is beautiful, Rachel. Thank you so much for saying that. And I want to kind of note that for those of us that, I figured out my body in my 20s and 30s eventually,
Yeah.
and was floating in my early 40s. And now that, any of those post-menopausal
Yeah.
mamas like me, where your body seems to, like, reject everything that you've ever tried. But I
Yeah.
used to be able to go on a diet and lose 10 pounds in a week. And I used to be like, I hear you. I
Yeah.
hear you. You
Uh-huh.
have a new body. It was created differently. It needs more compassion. It needs more grace. It needs more
Yeah.
tenderness. And I promise you, if you give it to it, it will respond. You just have to be consistent.
Yes. Yes.
And all of the stuff that we do with food, all the little wonky ways that we manage it, is just going to throw our nervous system into that cortisol state, that stress state. We've got to take captive our thoughts. We've got to take captive those behaviors. Rachel, any last thoughts before we end today?
No, I think again, we just want to make sure that we're embracing mindful eating. We're wanting to make sure that we include the Bible and what the Lord tells us, how He sees us, that He's uniquely made us. We're trying to just transform our relationship with food. We want to stay aware of our thoughts, bringing them in alignment to what God's word says. Understanding this is a spiritual attack, that, again, as long as we live in this world, we are going to have troubles. The Lord tells us that He has overcome the world, but we're in it until we go home to be with Him. And so it's a journey walking towards mindful eating, not just about food, but nurturing just our fuel needed to make this body go, and the nurturing of our souls.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you for recapping that. You did a
Yeah.
lovely job. I love how your brain works. All right, guys. Well, this has been so lovely. If this has been helpful for you, please give us 5 stars. Share this podcast with other people so this word gets out. We know that this is probably a lot different than what other people are talking about when it comes to spiritual attacks and food and our bodies. So we just want to get that message out. And if it means something to you, please share it. Thank you for spending the time with us today. Give us lots of likes. We love you. God
And
bless.
let's just close this up in some prayer.
Mm,
Heavenly Father, we're just asking for your strength and wisdom to our eating habits, to just the ability to recognize the and counter the negative thoughts that come our way. Lord, give us
yes,
the
Lord.
peace of your presence, nudge us where we need to make some adjustments. And Lord, help us understand that you give us grace and mercy every day, and we need to give ourselves that same grace and mercy and just take the steps forward, that we're working with you to understand the body that you've been given, that you have purpose for us, that you have made us beautifully and uniquely, wonderfully made. Lord Jesus, thank you so much for loving us and continuing to walk with us in this process. It's in your mighty name, Jesus. Amen. We want to thank everyone for joining us in this discussion. Until next time, may you find peace and mindfulness in every meal.
Amen. If this is helpful, give me a like, follow me, or subscribe for more.